Indiana basketball is just a couple of months into the Darian DeVries era in Bloomington, but do fans think he's doing a good job? And is DeVries the long-term answer here in Bloomington?
You are Locked On Hoosiers, your daily podcast on the Indiana Hoosiers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, and it is the Locked On Hoosiers podcast. I'm your man, Jacob Goins. I appreciate you being here, making this your first listen or your first watch every single day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is your team every day. Thank you so much for making that so, for making us the number one sports podcasting network in the world. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Well, we're going to talk about the college football playoff, break down that bracket a little bit more, and how Indiana can win a national championship. Plus, we'll take a look around the Big Ten and college basketball as we are heading into the Big Ten restart in 2026 and break down that Indiana basketball schedule as well. That's got some tough stretches for Darian DeVries. But speaking of Indiana basketball, and speaking of Darian DeVries, we're a couple of months into this new era here in Bloomington. Of course, the last couple of coaches just have not gone well. The team has not been exciting to watch. And you fire Mike Woodson or part ways or he steps away or whatever language they want to use. And you go and get Darian DeVries from West Virginia. And we knew somewhat, right, of what we were getting into in terms of a style change on the floor. We knew that we were getting brand new players on this team, not a single minute returning from last year's squad. And we knew that the non-conference schedule was challenging at times, but wasn't overly difficult. Indiana heads into 2026 right now as a team, 10-3 overall, 1-1 in Big Ten play. And the question that I'm seeing people already discuss is Darian DeVries doing a good job? How does the fan base feel? How do you feel about Darian DeVries in his first year, just a couple of months into the actual season? Plus, is he the long-term answer for Indiana basketball? And I think it's too early, just to be honest with you, to determine the second part of that question, or the second question rather, of is he the answer long term? Because we haven't really seen what this team can do at its max potential, at least for this team and then future teams as well. And whether he's the answer long term, I think, is more than just wins and losses on the floor. Yes, that's the ultimate goal, of course, is to win as many games as you can. But we still need to see what he can do in the transfer portal over a couple of years. We still need to see what he can do in high school recruiting, right? Over a couple of years. Can he land some of these kids from Indiana? Can he land some of the kids in this area? Can he go and compete with the big dogs in the recruiting trail, right, in terms of NIL and development and putting guys in the league? All of those are questions that still need to be answered with his staff, his head coaching, tenure here. And we just don't know the answers to those yet. I'm confident, I'm hopeful in that, but we simply just don't know the answer quite yet. And so in terms of those things, yeah, we don't know. But what I can tell you is that the fan base is still in see it to believe it mode. They still are in waiting to see how this season's going to go, and probably next season too. Because let's be real, this year's team is fun, but this year's team is not going to be overly competitive coming down the stretch in the Big Ten, and will not make a deep run in the NCAA tournament, most likely. They have their ups and downs, and their ups are a lot of fun. It's dropping 100 points. It's watching Lamar Wilkerson go off for 45 right inside of Assembly Hall. And it's the idea that when this team is hot, they are pretty much unbeatable. But it's also the idea that that comes about once every 2 weeks. And when this team is not hitting shots, they simply don't know what to do. And again, we knew what we were getting with Darian DeVries. We knew we were going to get a much much higher tempo offense compared to Mike Woodson. It's night and day. This team gets up and down the floor. They shoot a bunch of shots, and they're looking to score the basketball, which is fun, which is exciting. A lot of times it's from outside the arc, and I wish they would get more paint touches. I wish the bigs would be more aggressive inside, and that would obviously help and ultimately help this Indiana offense, but an offense that gets stuck in the half court a lot. But defensively, they're actually pretty darn good. And I know we have some gripes and we have seen some laziness and we've seen some disinterest on the defensive end of the floor. But if you go look at KenPom, which I think is just phenomenal, if you're not looking at KenPom, then you really should be as a basketball fan. It is just advanced analytics and things about offensive rating, defensive rating. It takes in your luck factor as well. I mean, it takes in strength of schedule, strength of record. It really is fascinating with KenPom. And as we sit here right now, heading into 2026 in the Big Ten restart, Indiana's 31st in the country in KenPom, which that's pretty good given the fact that you haven't really beaten anybody just yet. Your Marquette win, it's worthless now. That team is under 500, I believe. They're not that good. Kansas State's the same way, but the Cookman has really fallen off and not the team I thought they were going to be. And nobody's going to give you credit for beating Penn State on your home floor. It just is what it is. Losing on the road to Minnesota was unacceptable to me, and then not finding a way to win either one of the Louisville or Kentucky games, that is kind of disappointing to me. But the idea that KenPom says you're 31st in the country with all the metrics and all the stats, that's better than I thought going in to 2026, right? A couple of months in. And if I asked you to tell me which numbers, which stats do you think is better, the adjusted offensive rating or the adjusted defensive rating, what would you tell me? I feel like most people would say offense just because of the high moments, right? The triple digit scoring outputs at times and things like that. But because of some of those lulls, because of some of those disappointing games, Indiana's defensive numbers are actually much better than their offensive numbers. Offensive rating, according to KenPom, you're ranked 56th in the country. Defense, how about this? You're a top 20 team in the nation. 16th, according to KenPom, as of this recording. And so that tells me a couple of things. That tells me that Indiana is extremely consistent or inconsistent offensively, and they're actually better defensively than we're giving them credit for. So is Darian DeVries doing a good job? All things considered, I would say yes. He built this team. This is how he wanted to construct it. The lack of bigs is disappointing and concerning, yes. But this is the team he wanted. This is the structure that he wanted. And I think all things considered, other than, again, the ugly loss on the road to Minnesota, what more could we have asked for in year one? Asking to beat Louisville or Kentucky is probably a steep ask, but you had chances to win those games. And so that gives me confidence going into Big Ten play. And again, we're going to break down the schedule here coming up in just a moment. But I think overall, he has done a good job. He has gotten fans at least interested again in Indiana basketball. Now, to his disadvantage, I guess, football winning and being the number one team in the country doesn't help because everybody just wants to talk about football, and rightfully so, which we'll do in our third segment. But he's going to be fine. Is he the long-term answer? Couldn't tell you. We have to wait and see. But I think in year one, going into January, he's at least given a spark. You at least are enjoying watching Indiana basketball for the most part. And I think this team has a chance to make some noise. Maybe not compete long-term this year, but at least make some noise in Big Ten play. And I think Darian DeVries has done a pretty good job. All right, coming up in our today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers, we will continue talking about Indiana basketball, look at the Big Ten, talk about what's going on around the conference, and what the Hoosiers have coming up to start the new year. That's coming up here on Locked On Hoosiers. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by Game Time. There's nothing like college football season. The tailgates, packed stadiums, and being right there in the middle of it all. The energy, the bands, the moments that you remember forever. But actually getting tickets, that part, it used to be frustrating with long queues and logins and prices jumping at checkout. But that's why Game Time gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to unlock amazing college football tickets and experiences in just a few taps. So when I open the Game Time app and you look at upcoming college football playoff games, right, for Indiana in the Rose Bowl, there's still tickets available. If you want to make that last minute trip, or maybe you went out there and you didn't have a ticket and you're waiting for some prices to drop, keep checking Game Time. They have the best prices, and all of the prices and all the fees are all built in, so you know exactly what you're going to pay at checkout. And you can see your view from your seat too. So any place in the Rose Bowl, you can pick your seat and see the view from it in that stadium with a gorgeous view there in California. So if you're looking for Rose Bowl tickets, Game Time is the place to go by taking the guesswork out of buying those tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Be sure you download the Game Time app today. Welcome back into Locked On Hoosiers. Appreciate you being here, making this your go-to spot for all things Indiana athletics as we continue to do shows from the basement of my parents' house, because that's how the holidays work. And we are not at the usual setup, but still trying to put out as much content for you as we can. Hope everybody had a Merry Christmas and getting ready for the new year as well. Just a couple of days away from Indiana football kicking off in the Rose Bowl. So we'll talk some more about that in our final segment. But hey, want to remind you really quickly, in case you haven't heard or you haven't checked it out yet, we've got our Everydayer Club going right now. And you can be a part of more than just the show with Locked On Hoosiers. You can get access to our private Discord where we're having fun conversations in there. You can get this show ad-free every single day. So if you're already making this your first listen every single day or your first watch, and you want this to be ad-free on the audio side, you can do that. Just $5 a month on our Everydayer Club, or $50 for the year. Plus, you're going to get cool updates and some other great things coming in the future. So you can check that out right now. I'll put the link for it down in the description below on audio and on YouTube, but it's our Everydayer Club, or you can go to your browser right now and type in lockedonhoosiers.supercast.com. No www, okay? Just lockedonhoosiers.supercast.com. Go check that out. We're super excited for that. The new year's coming. It's a great way to get in and get involved and get more out of Locked On Hoosiers. And as we continue talking college basketball, right? For Indiana, 10-3 on the year, couple of decent wins, but nothing overly crazy. The schedule in the Big Ten is going to be pretty brutal. Just got to be completely honest with you. Reminder, you're 1-1 in Big Ten play after losing the opener on the road to Minnesota and then blasting Penn State because you dropped 113 points on them in a historic night inside of Assembly Hall. You start with Washington at home on January 4th. You then go to Maryland on January 7th, so you have a chance to get a couple of decent wins. Maryland is a 500 basketball team, okay? They're 0-2 in Big Ten play. They lost their games to Michigan and Iowa, and most people are going to lose to Michigan, but they lost to Iowa as well. And so you have a chance, if you're Indiana, to start the calendar year off right. You get 2 wins there, okay? Then it really ramps up, and this is where the Big Ten is going to be absolutely brutal. You then have 4 games in a row against top 25 teams, and 5 of your first 6 games in the new year are against top 25 teams. All right. After those first 2, you host Nebraska, who's a top 15 team, and they're legit. They can score. You go on the road to East Lansing, who's a top 10 Michigan State team right now. You then host Iowa, who's been in and out of the top 25. They are as of this recording. Then you go on the road to Ann Arbor, who's the second-ranked team in the country, the Michigan Wolverines. Then you go to Rutgers, and then you host Purdue, who is consistently a top 5, top 10 team in the nation. So it's going to be tough sledding down the backstretch of January. You then get into February, where it's a little bit easier. You make your West Coast trip. You go take on UCLA and USC. You host Wisconsin and Oregon at home. Those will be fun. You then have Illinois on the road, who's a top 25 team. Purdue on the road, again, a top 5, top 10 team. Then you have a chance down the backstretch to win some games. 3 straight at home with Northwestern, Michigan State, top 10 team, Minnesota in the rematch, and then on the road in Columbus to take on the Ohio State Buckeyes. It's about winning a couple games, surviving in there, and then winning some games down the stretch as well. And look, trips to Michigan State and to Michigan, you're not winning those games. I'm sorry. You're just not going to do it. But you can beat teams like Nebraska and Iowa if you shoot the ball well and if you play defense up to your standard and up to the level that we know you can. You can beat Purdue on your home floor. Sure, they have a major size advantage, but it's going to be about outrunning that team. It's going to be about getting up and down the floor and hitting some shots. And that's what this team has to do. It's fun when it's on. It's extremely frustrating when it's not. But for a team like Indiana, who we can't fall back on a big man. If the shots aren't falling, we can't say, well, let's abandon that and let's go in the paint. Let's go inside. We don't really have that, especially against the Michigans and the Purdues of the world who have 2 or 3 guys that tower over us, right? It's simple. In those games, you're just going to have to hit some big-time shots. And we've talked about, me and Brian, right, on our live shows of Locked On Hoosiers, we've talked about how Indiana's got to find some more scoring, man. Lamar Wilkerson's going to get his, and Tucker DeVries, I can't read him, man. Sometimes he's great, sometimes he's not. But teams in the Big Ten are not stupid. You're going up against some of the best coaches in the nation. They understand, hey, let's just stop those two and make somebody else beat us. Can Tate and Connerway do it? Sure, sometimes, not on a nightly basis, but he has the ability to do it. But let's say you take him away. Then what? Indiana has nothing proven outside of those 3. And that's disappointing. Going back to the Darian DeVries grading conversation, that is disappointing to me that nobody else has the ability or has had the intention or the motivation or the want, right, to step up and be that next guy. Nick Dorn is trying, and I think there's definitely a possibility there if he continues to shoot the ball well. But Connor Enright, non-existent offensively. Sam Alexis, he has spurts, but he's just not looking to score, which is just so frustrating to me. Reed Bailey's been non-existent because he's scared to do anything with the basketball. And then you really have nothing going for you on your bench because Trent Sisley has been quiet. You have a bunch of injuries there. You just simply don't have the dudes who have stepped up and wanted to be a part of this basketball team offensively. And that's scary because teams in the Big Ten will shut down your main guys and then you're stuck. Then you're screwed, right? And I mean, where do you go? Well, you literally have nowhere else to go because Ristic hasn't been playing. Miles is not somebody you're going to rely on consistently. Somebody that's averaging like 6 to 7 minutes a game. Like that's just not what you're looking for. And so who's that going to be? I think Nick Dorn has to be it. Connerway's got to be consistent. There's no doubt about that. He can be your X factor, but Nick Dorn's going to have to knock down some shots. And plain and simple, your big's got to step up. Reed Bailey and Sam Alexis got to man up, get the basketball, and look to do something with it. And even against some of those teams like Purdue and Michigan State, who are going to be so much bigger and stronger than you, go after them. Get them in foul trouble. They can't handle not having their bigs on the floor. They're deeper than you, sure. But you get them in some foul trouble and get them stressing a little bit, then you have a chance to pull off an upset, especially if you're at home inside of Assembly Hall, where you'll have Purdue coming in and Michigan State will come in too. Like you have those opportunities to do that, but you're going to have to find unique ways to beat these teams. You can't just man up and play 5-on-5 half-court basketball and expect to win many games in the Big Ten this season. It's just not going to work with how good the conference is and how inconsistent this Indiana team is. But look, I look at the first 2 like Washington and Maryland. I think you can win those. I think you have a chance, okay, to pull off an upset against Nebraska or Iowa at home. One of those, if you're able to do that, would be fantastic. You're not winning at Michigan State and Michigan. Let's just go ahead and wrap that up. All right, you can go on the road and beat that Rutgers team who is 500 heading into, or I think they may have got a win the other day against Delaware State, but basically they're not that good, okay? And they'll have several losses before they host you. So that's not anything crazy to worry about with Rutgers. You then have Purdue at home, which will be tough, but you have a chance to do it. You go out west, try to get a win out there. You come home against Wisconsin and Oregon, maybe split those games. You do have to go back-to-back on the road to Illinois and Purdue. Those will be tough. And then rip off 3 of your last 4, or 4 of your last 4 against Northwestern, Michigan State, Minnesota, and Ohio State. You do that, You're flirting as a 500 team, maybe a couple of games above 500 in Big Ten play. You have a couple of quad one wins in there, a couple of top 25 upsets in there, and Indiana can make the NCAA tournament, which I still think is the goal here. Okay. I still think the goal is to make the NCAA tournament. I just don't think it's as clear as I was thinking it was going to be to start the season. I thought this team was a lock to make the tournament. I thought the talent was there. The makeup was there. I thought this team was just a bona fide lock to make the NCAA tournament. I don't feel that way right now. That can change, especially if you start hot in Big Ten play, you pull off some upsets, absolutely. But with the makeup of this team right now, I don't feel confident about that, but I feel confident they can make the tournament. But I got to see a whole lot more before I buy into that. But I'm telling you, folks, this conference is really, really good, and Indiana's going to have to pull off a couple of upsets if they want to make it to the big dance come in March. All right, coming up on our final segment of Lockdown Hoosiers, we will flip to football as we're just a couple of days away from Indiana kicking off in the Rose Bowl, and the college football playoff begins tomorrow. We talk about that more and how Indiana can win it all right after this. Today's episode of Lockdown Hoosiers is brought to you by FanDuel. Fridays already feel different during basketball season, right? And FanDuel is making them even better. Every Friday night before the games tip off, FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is an official spot for you in pregame, a limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action begins. Fridays from 6 to 7:30 Eastern Time have become appointment viewing with NBA Happy Hour. By opening the FanDuel app during NBA Happy Hour, it always brings something new, boosts, bonuses, and surprises. And the timing is perfect. Right before the games, right before the weekend starts, you can get in on the action with this exclusive bonuses with FanDuel. So before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour. Every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, a little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour, only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right, final segment here on Locked On Hoosiers. Thank you again so much for being here, making this your first listen or your first watch every single day. Make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube, as we are now over 7,400 subscribers. So thank you so much for making that possible. We are on our way to 8K, then 9, then 10, and to the moon. So thank you so much for supporting the show as we are getting closer and closer to the start of the college football playoff as it begins tomorrow. That's right, a game on New Year's Eve, more games on New Year's Day, including your Indiana Hoosiers against the Alabama Crimson Tide. And as we get closer, man, I don't know if it's arrogance. I don't know if it's overconfidence. I don't know what it is. I just think Indiana's going to win this football game. I really, really do. And I just think the matchups are there for Indiana. I think the coaching is there for Indiana. I think the experience is there for Indiana. And I'm really excited to see how this game plays out. But man, when you look at the playoff as a whole, I don't think I've made full predictions yet for this playoffs, right? With one game on New Year's Eve and the rest on New Year's Day. And so let's do that. Let's make quick predictions here. We'll start with the Miami and Ohio State game coming up tomorrow night there in the Cotton Bowl, the Goodyear Cotton Bowl. And look, Miami deserves a lot of credit, and I have to apologize because I did not believe in that Miami team. I didn't believe in Mario Cristobal. I didn't believe in Carson Beck because that duo is known for blowing it in about every big game that they're a part of. But they went on the road to beat Texas A&M. They went on the road to beat an SEC team, and they did it defensively. And that Miami team, their defense is legit. Their offense is still wishy-washy to me, but I think their defense can keep them in this game against the Buckeyes. Indiana's defense did, right? When you go up against a nasty defensive front and a secondary, a guy like Keontae Scott for Miami, who has really turned it on as of late and forcing turnovers and deflections and things, I think Miami can hang around in this game. Problem is their offense stinks. And I think Ohio State will be able to overcome that. The line has jumped around. It's anywhere from 9 to 10 points, I believe. I like the Buckeyes to win this game, but I'll take Miami to keep it close and cover. If you can get it, if it's still a 2-possession spread by the time this thing kicks off, I think Miami can keep it close, but Ohio State will kind of big brother, little brother, and just hold their hand out on their forehead and keep them at a distance, a safe distance for most of the evening. We then move into New Year's Day, where Oregon and Texas Tech kick things off, and I am so excited for this game. We've been talking about this matchup for what? 2 weeks now since the bracket came out, knowing that the Ducks were going to blast James Madison, and they absolutely did, hanging 51 on them to show why G5 teams don't belong in this playoff. But now you get the Ducks and you get the Red Raiders. And man, I don't think people are talking enough about Texas Tech. I really don't. And everybody wants to highlight their defense. I like their offense. I think Texas Tech is one of the best offenses in all of college football. Folks, listen to the point totals they've been putting up in their last few games. 34, 49, 48, 29, 43, 42. This offense can move the football. And I understand they played in the Big 12 and there aren't as many good defenses there. And Oregon's defense is legit. But I'm taking the team that I trust more on the defensive side of the football. We've seen this Oregon team up close and in person, right? Us Indiana folks. They're good on defense, but they're not great on defense. And I think Texas Tech is great on defense. I love Dante Moore. I love Dan Lanning. I think that's a phenomenal combination, but I'm taking the Red Raiders to get this thing done, which would then match up with either Alabama or Indiana. And, you know, for the Hoosiers' sake, I don't know if we want to rematch with Oregon or we want to see Texas Tech for the first time. I think we want to see Texas Tech, but I don't really know because of the whole beat the same team twice in the same season narrative. I think the Hoosiers could beat Oregon again. I'm not worried about that, but I think Texas Tech would be a phenomenal challenge, and I think that could be your battle of a national championship game in the Peach Bowl if it's Indiana and Texas Tech. But I am taking the Red Raiders, and then the night game is Ole Miss and Georgia. Look, Ole Miss, it was a fun story. It was a fun time, you beating up on Tulane without Lane Kiffin. It's not going to happen. I think Georgia wins. I think they roll in this game. I think Georgia beats Ole Miss by 2 scores. I think it's 10+. I don't think it's close by the end of it. I think Kirby Smart is one of the best defensive-minded guys in the country. I think Chambliss will be miserable in this game, the quarterback for Ole Miss, and I trust Georgia to continue to move the football up and down the field. Their defense is opportunistic. It's good enough, and I think they just absolutely destroy Ole Miss in this football game. And I told you, I think Indiana wins. I do. I think the Hoosiers win this game in the Rose Bowl, which would give us the top 4 teams. And some people may say, oh, you're picking all chalk. Well, that didn't happen last year. Right. But remember, this is a different format than it was last year. The top 4 seeds a year ago were not the top 4 teams in the country. This year it is. And I'm not worried about these teams coming off an extra week of rest. I think it benefits them. I think the top 4 teams win. I think we have Texas Tech and Indiana in the Peach Bowl. I think we have Georgia and Ohio State in the Fiesta Bowl. Both of those games, actually one of them on January 8th, the other one on January 9th. I did not realize that they split those up. So the Fiesta Bowl, that's so weird. Why would they do that? It's Thursday, January 8th, and then the Peach Bowl, which is the one that the Hoosiers would be in, is on Friday, January 9th. Why would they do that? That's really weird to me. But anyway, that's my prediction. I think that's what happens, but excited to see what happens in the college football playoff that begins tomorrow on New Year's Eve. And that is going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers. Thank you again so much for being here. I really, really appreciate it. Taking a little time on New Year's Eve off, so we will be back on New Year's Day. We'll have a little content for you there. We'll obviously be going live right after the game for Indiana against Alabama. Win or lose, we'll go live. We'll talk about it. Hopefully we're talking about a win, but we'll talk about it regardless here on Locked On Hoosiers. So happy New Year, Hoosier fans. We will talk to you on New Year's Day right here on Locked On Hoosiers. Until then, stay safe, and I'll talk to you later.